So welcome back to the Facebook studios at Raisina, and we are joined by one of the most erudite speakers of our times, the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Iran, Mr. Zarif. Welcome to the studios and thank you for coming to the Raisina Dialogue.
Good to be with you again.
You've had a very interesting discussion in the main halls a bit earlier, and I was hearing you quite carefully. And of course you have in many sense painted a rather grim picture of where we are, but for the benefit of those who are watching us online, if I could ask you to briefly describe what is really happening now.
Well, we have a global situation where the biggest power is not committed to the rules of the game, is actually committed to breaking the rules of the game, which is a very serious problem. Not committed to international law, and not even trying to show that it's committed to international law. It says, I'll take disproportionate measures, I'll attack cultural sites, we'll starve your people if you don't listen to us. So this is a problem. In our region, which is probably more important for everybody than some statements coming from Washington, we have a problem which is also a cognitive problem, and that is our people in the region believe that they can buy security from outside, believe that they can purchase security. Of course they can purchase arms, and they've been purchasing a lot of it. I mean, a fourth of the entire global arms sales comes to the Persian Gulf. Saudi Arabia alone is the third largest spender of military budget. They have $67 billion in military budget. Our entire military budget is $16 billion. So this is the reality in the region. It looks grim because those who are selling weapons do not want to see a situation when they sell less weapons. It's up to us to change the situation, and I believe the situation, when it comes to that, if we recognize that it's not that grim, it's really very hopeful, and that is why Iran has presented a hopeful sign for the future in hope for most peace endeavor.
No, so let's build on that. Who are your partners in this hope? I mean, who are the actors globally who are working now over time to try and build some framework for a durable peace?
I think we should start with the immediate neighborhood. We call it Hormuz community. That is Iran, Iraq, GCC, the 6 countries of southern Persian Gulf, plus probably Yemen at some time. We are the countries most closely affected by the developments.
Correct.
But then we have a wider neighborhood, which includes Pakistan, India, Turkey, others, and we have a global neighborhood, which includes the United Nations. Our plan provides the possibility for others joining the Hope community, as well as for the United Nations umbrella to be there from the very beginning.
What are the Europeans saying to you today? They were trying to be the intermediaries, try to negotiate between the Trump administration and Iran in the last few years. Have they given up, or are they still trying?
Well, of course they're trying, but they're barking at the wrong door, at the wrong tree, and knocking at the wrong door. Because the problem is, they have been trying to get the United States to give them permission to work with Iran. Whereas this is, contradiction in terms. The United States has a maximum pressure policy. Europe has to show that it is a worthy partner. Otherwise, people would not, countries would not even care to have relations with Europe. They'll go to the boss directly and deal with the boss. The Europeans want to show some presence in the international community. They've been trying, but they have failed because they went at it the wrong way. And they're getting a reward for it. The Nord Stream. The United States is now sanctioning them for doing the Nord Stream. I think the road for Europe is open. Europe can, we're not asking Europe to compensate for the United States. They can't. But they can do their own part. They can stand up.
So an independent EU policy or a European policy is important?
An independent European policy is important, as is an independent Indian policy, as is an independent Chinese policy. We see that India has far more greater independence than Europe does. And that is why we've been able to do some business with India.
And the Chinese, how are the Chinese responding?
Yeah, I mean, there are a multitude of ways. The United States does not control the world. We're dealing with India in our own currencies. We're dealing with China in our own currencies. We're dealing with Russia in our own currencies. And I think that gives us greater independence. I think we're dealing with Turkey in our own currencies. That gives us greater independence. That allows us not to basically subordinate our interests to the interests of others. Now, the United States has an interest in increasing the oil prices because they want to be able to replace Iran in the oil market themselves. Their shale oil, their shale gas. I mean, they're now selling to Asia. They're trying to replace Iranian very economical oils to oil and gas to Asia with their own uneconomical oil and gas. And it's a pity that people just succumb to their orders.
Mr. Minister, there are concerns, and perhaps for the benefit of those who are watching this, you may want to elaborate on the notion that Iran is going nuclear. You know, there is a second concern that is now being voiced these days, that you have walked out of the JCPOA.
No, we didn't walk out of the JCPOA. We took measures. I mean, the Europeans, after 2 years, are just reminded or just found out that JCPOA has a paragraph 36 dispute resolution mechanism. They have forgotten that I actually triggered that dispute resolution mechanism in May of 2018. And in November of 2018, I wrote to them and said, we have exhausted the dispute resolution mechanism. But unfortunately, in their colonial mentality, they believe that it is them who can only use these dispute resolution mechanism. Whereas if you read paragraph 36, it starts with Iran, that if Iran believes others are not implementing their commitment, it can raise dispute resolution mechanism. And it did. So JCPOA is not dead. JCPOA is alive, on life support, but still alive. And I believe it's in the interest of the international community to keep it alive. But Iran has no interest in nuclear weapons. We do not believe that nuclear weapons augment our security. We have a very clear security calculation which takes us to the conclusion that nuclear weapons will not give us neither a first strike nor a second strike capability, and that is why they will only undermine our security. In addition to the fact that we have a religious principle, a religious fatwa or decree by our supreme leader that nuclear weapons and weapons of mass destruction are forbidden in Islam. That is why during the Iran-Iraq war, after at least 4 years of Iraqi consistent use of chemical weapons from 1984 to 1988, including against our civilians, we never retaliate, although we had chemical weapons.
You know, this morning we had a discussion at Raisina, and we are seeing this around the world. India, Iran are not immune to it either. We are seeing communities becoming more loud, mobilizing. You see that everywhere. You see protests in New York, DC, London, Paris, Tehran, Delhi, Bombay, it's everywhere. How is the mood in the street? And I am now asking this because you are a diplomat and perhaps one of the finest ones. How is the voices from the street beginning to challenge your profession generally? That how is diplomacy more difficult in the digital age because so many people have so many megaphones? And second, how does it limit or strengthen your actions post this particular incident?
But first of all, let me tell you that, I mean, this is a welcome fact. People came to the streets in huge numbers, not only in Iran, but even in India, to mourn General Soleimani. That should have sent a message to the Americans that people are not dancing in the streets, because they were talking about people dancing in the streets. Thankfully, for the digital revolution, the lie of Pompeo became apparent to the entire world, which I call arrogant ignorance or ignorant arrogance. But the fact of the matter is, emotions are globalized. We cannot contain emotions. Knowledge is globalized, environment is globalized. In my view, security is globalized. You cannot have security when others are insecure. Emotions are globalized. People get angry. People learn from each other in venting their frustration in the streets. And you have to look at it in a balanced way. You have to see the millions of people who came out to the streets of Tehran to mourn the death of a hero.
He was a national icon.
Huh? Yeah. You also see people who are coming to the streets to basically state their unhappiness with concealment.
Correct.
Why did they were lied to? Why were they lied to? This is a question, legitimate question that people have. Of course, there are civil ways of raising that. There are street ways of raising that. You cannot control either.
And as a diplomat, how do you find this new dynamic? How does it impact your job?
Well, I mean, globalization has not made our job less difficult. Let me put it that way. You know, we no longer have monopoly of anything. States at a certain stage used to have monopoly of everything.
Correct.
We lost the monopoly on economy long time ago. We lost the monopoly on force.
Correct.
Long time ago. We lost the monopoly on information long time ago. So we have to live with it. This is the real new world. And in long-term perspective, it's very good. It makes government more transparent, even whether they want it or not, whether they like it or not. It makes truth more readily available. It makes
people more accountable.
People more accountable, and it makes every individual count.
Yes.
Today, every human being can make a difference, and that's very important. It's a very serious responsibility too.
So let me ask you the same question I asked the Indian Foreign Minister. I asked him that since he has taken office, there have been some interesting developments in India, and how does he, what does he tell the world when they ask questions about it? So let me ask you that same question. You know, we hear the news reports from Iran about these protests and student movements and certain resentment on the streets, and much of it we learn because from the English media, right? We learn it from sources which are not necessarily our own. It's through secondary sources. So since you had this opportunity where you are communicating with an Indian audience which is very fond of Iran and is very a keen follower of your country and has old linkages, as a nation today, what are the key debates that are shaping the country, and what are the key movements and mood of the politics and economics in that country?
There are certainly frustrations. Frustrations with economy, with employment. Of course, we took a very serious measure by agreeing to negotiate, but the people see that it backfired, basically. So people are watching. They react to failures. They react to failure of the general government. We were not responsible for that because we were not informed, of conceding. They're reacting. They're reacting to economic failures. They're reacting to the worsening of their economic situation. They react to the, I mean, you know that when fuel prices go up, everybody, everywhere, there's demonstration. The problem with Iran is that some people sitting in Washington believe, this is the last day of the regime, because they've been wishing for a regime change in Iran for 40 years. And now anything they see, they say, this is the last day of the regime. They don't look at millions of people who came to the street to mourn their, what they call it, their nemesis. This is the title of, I think, Time, some time ago.
One of the magazines.
One of their magazines. So they don't see that, but they just see people who come to the street to demonstrate against the government. It comes in a package. People supporting their national sovereignty, their independence, their pride, and at the same time expressing their grievances. Sometimes expressions of those grievances go beyond the limits of the law. The government has a responsibility to deal with that. But generally speaking, the fact of the matter is people support their country, their system, but at the same time want to be able to express their difficulties, their grievances, their problems. And we should, as the government, provide them with the opportunity. We believe the ballot box is the best opportunity. We hope that we will have a free and fair election for the parliament within a month. that would be the best opportunity for people
to express themselves.
to express their anger even. Anger at the ballot box is something that happens all over the world.
So, Mr. Minister, thank you for joining us. I think you are nearly a permanent feature of Raisina Dialogue, and we are grateful for that. You have supported us since our early days, and of course our old linkages with your country continue to ensure that we will always be a platform where we will present and engage with questions that are most important for you and for the region. We wish your country well, and we wish you the best for your elections, and may we all find new pathways through these troubled times. These are significant for all of us, and we hope that Raisina Dialogue becomes an arena where we can find some solutions through discussions. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you for having me, and we have exactly the same feelings for India.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir. Thank you.